Well, the Mavericks not in the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just, had to make sure we reiterated that for everybody.
Yeah, just in case you didn't notice.
Just in case you didn't know, Mavericks not in the playoffs. But some conversation floating around throughout the course of the day, not only on 105.3 The Fan, but also on the NBA Twitter sphere, about the idea of what the Mavericks could start to look like free agency-wise, given the fact that hopefully they're able to keep their top 10 protected pick, because I don't know if you know this, but we are 13 days away from finding out whether or not the Mavericks are about to send a pick to Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks, or if they're going to be in the top 10, possibly drafting a fantastic talent or moving it somewhere else to go get a veteran to help out this Mavericks team, and then wondering if they're able to keep Kyrie Irving after that. But apparently there's a sect of Mavericks fans, NBA fans, that are like, hey, apparently the Memphis Grizzlies told Dillon Brooks in his exit meeting, under no circumstances, my guy, are you coming back to this franchise.
Yeah, delete my number. Don't bother begging or pleading.
Don't text me. Don't call me. No pigeon carrier, nothing.
Yeah, don't send me nothing.
Leave your stuff at the door, and we'll come and get it. Don't even worry about coming into the facility. It's going to be locked by the time you get back or try to get back in here tomorrow. Not going to happen. So Dillon Brooks is not coming back to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Which is kind of, we kind of got into this bag of like, looking at the actual idea that, such strong words got out, I fully believe that was not intended to be made public. After the series, when their general manager, I forget his name, my apologies, but he was asked about, what about Dillon Brooks? Because he's a free agent. And he was like, yeah, we don't want to talk about that at this time. We'll talk about it when it's time. Right? So it seemed like they were trying to play this. And that was, really, you say that and we know what time it is anyways. Oh, okay, if you wanted to keep him, you probably would have said that.
Zach Kleiman.
There it is. Thank you. And so it made it apparent, but like, this is one of those things where somebody got a hold of that information. They decided to report it. And I do not believe that this was necessarily the team saying, we want this to be out there. That being said, this really caught a whole bunch of people's attention because he wanted to get attention. He garnered a whole bunch of attention throughout this season and particularly in these playoffs. And so that puts a very strong spotlight on him. But I think that also taints the way that we view him. And so now, him as a free agent, understanding that he's not going to be back in Memphis, what does he provide? What does he not provide? What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses? And when you look at it as a Mavs team that is constantly looking for guys that can maybe act as your first perimeter defender, that's something that the Mavs are interested in. And so Dillon Brooks pops up as a free agent possibility in that vein. So that's why a lot of people are popping up like, would you be interested in this, KG? I pass it to you.
Well, let me help y'all out. I spoke to somebody at the Mavs today about the idea of Dillon Brooks, whether or not he might be a fit here in Dallas. In so many words, hell no. Okay? Basically, from what I've been told, look, he is not viewed favorably around the league. In fact, there are big questions about basketball character, basketball IQ. Shot selection is poor.
Shot selection is a big one.
Yeah, shot selection is a big one. Which, according to whom I spoke with, said, look, that would not be a fit here in Dallas. And when you hear those things about, look, defensively they like him, but whether
you should,
yeah. But whether or not the young man can grow up, mature, show the kind of high basketball character and IQ that would be attractive to the Mavericks, they don't feel like that he is necessarily capable of that. And how radioactive he is right now, given the things that happened to him in the series against the Los Angeles Lakers, from what I've been told, not a fit necessarily here in Dallas based on those concerns that they would have about him.
Here's my problem. And I'm not saying that I definitively feel like this should go the other way. However, are you familiar with the saying, beggars can't be choosers? The Mavs feeling real beggarly right now, right? With the way that your assets are set up and your roster is set up. And so what you might term as, there's some issues that we do not feel great about, sounds to me like an open box special, right? Because self-awareness is something that he clearly lacks. That's what we start talking about when we're talking about the shot profile, right? He is, and I need to double check this, but I believe he is like a 30-something% 3-point shooter, which in this day and age, I know that there was points where being like a 33% 3-point shooter was good. In this day and age, that is not good enough, right? Let me see if I can double check my information on this. But he takes shots at a far higher clip than somebody would as a 30-something% 3-point shooter. This offseason, or this season rather, he shot 32.6%, and for the career, he has shot 34%, right? So he is not that level of shooter, but he shoots those, and that points to like a lack of self-awareness. Going out and calling out the big dog on the other team, right? Even though you want to be some level of like Draymond Green, and then throwing that rock and then hiding your hand when it's time to come and answer the questions after a loss.
He sure couldn't be found.
That's the lack of self-awareness. However, I wonder if this can serve as like an opportunity of growth. And if that's the case, you have an opportunity of getting what I again term as an open box special, and maybe getting in on the ground floor or something that might be a little cheaper for what you need. Because again, you need to pay bargain prices to get what you need. Now, of course, the tough part about that is then you end up in the situation where there's a possibility of you getting lesser quality because you're trying to be cheap. And that's something that you don't want to do either. But I think that you've backed yourself into such a corner that I don't know that you could be so dismissive about it.
We also heard reports about Dillon Brooks reportedly wanting $25 million, that coming from ESPN's Ramona Shelburne. He's not a player right now that you look at.
Not going to be able to do it.
According to, what the league views him as somebody that you possibly want on your team at the moment, which gets us to the conversation of what kind of free agents then should the Mavericks be looking at going into the summer, given some of the limited resources that they have. Dwight Powell coming off an expiring contract, Christian Wood, as reported by several individuals, not expected to be back with the Mavericks going into next year as well. What kind of profile of player are the Mavericks possibly looking at this summer?
Well, they definitely need a big that can at least pose a challenge to players in the middle, right? Defensively, maybe alter shots, just somebody
credible resistance in the paint.
You definitely need that. When you look at the free agent list out here, the likes of Nikola Vucevic is out there. He's not an incredible defensive center. The likes of Brook Lopez is possibly who is going to be a free agent. I don't know what it would take to get him, and that guy's 35. Right, so I don't know how interested you are in that. And then when we start looking at it, Jakob Poeltl is a free agent. I wonder if you can ply him away, because that's a guy that actually does fit the type. But now we're starting to talk about possibly backup type bigs, because Mason Plumlee is going to be a free agent, and I don't know exactly how much money the Clippers are going to throw into that whole situation again. Right, those types of bigs are something that we're talking about, especially when you consider like, we think Kyrie Irving's going to be back. There's probably not going to be a ton of money, maybe in that vein. But also, what other things are you looking at? Because I think you still want to have the shooting necessary for this team, but you also perimeter defense needs to be something that you do.
Yeah, and if I'm the Dallas Mavericks here, and what we're starting to possibly understand about what this summer could look like because of the weakness that is the free agency class of 2023, what teams do you look around at the league that have a bunch of valuable assets that may be in a position where they're wanting to move on and maybe start over? Toronto.
Yeah, I was about to say Toronto Raptors. They just fired their head coach.
Yep.
They've had this group together for a little while.
There's no guarantee that Masai Ujiri is going to be back either.
Yep.
Because there's flirtations with Washington possibly coming at the end of this season as well. But they've got a lot of lengthy 3-and-D guys that I think the Mavericks need. Another guy that I think of immediately that I believe is part of this year's free agency class, Jeremy Grant from Portland. Now, I believe he's making around 18, 19.
20 million this year.
So yeah.
So, and you're going to have to up that.
Exactly.
Probably.
So that would be the kind of player that you're looking at, a guy that can put the ball on the deck, shoot the three a little bit, but also is a high-level defender, because they have got to get more athletic. They've got to get longer. And they've got to be able to defend better, because if you're not going to have the kind of resistance in the paint that you want to have, you've got to be able to defend out on the perimeter, and this team simply cannot do that. You moved on from your best one that you had in Dorian Finney-Smith to try and get upside in offense, and you couldn't defend a soul during the second half of the year. Really couldn't defend anybody throughout the course of the year, to be honest with you.
So there's a restricted free agent that I know, because of his visibility right now, There's some folks, in fact, someone on the truckwreck.com text line, I forgot the number earlier, was mentioning Rui Hachimura. Because Rui Hachimura out of college was an interesting prospect, and then he went to Washington and got that wizard stink on him. But he has shown his capabilities as a guy that can stretch a little bit and that can get a little busy on offense with this Lakers team. Now, he's going to be a restricted free agent again, so the Lakers will have an option of retaining him, and I imagine they might want to do that with the team that they've built together. But if he comes free, is that somebody you're interested in?
Yeah, I would be interested in him. But as you mentioned, what the Lakers have found in him, I think they'll want to keep him around, a young, athletic, wing that can do a multitude of things within the context of what Darvin Ham wants him to do defensively. And with Austin Reeves being discovered as a guy that will be around there, it appears as well, going to be getting his money, it looks like, this offseason as well. I mean, the options are limited for the Mavericks. That's why I think the trade market is going to be huge for them, and why, if you are a Mavericks fan, you are now hoping that that top 10 pick is protected and stays in the top 10, because you have an 80% chance to keep that top 10 pick and possibly pair it to go get something that makes it much more attractive for teams that may be looking to move on from certain players to be able to help you in the immediate, versus maybe trying to wait on someone if you draft them within the top 10, unless you somehow luck into the number 1 pick and get Victor Wembanyama, which those chances are extremely slim.
That'll help figure out some of your questions here, right? Like if you can luck into. All right, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously, I think we understand that if they probably get like top 4, they're probably like in that place where they feel good. But your second, third pick are probably like guards, or actually no, at least second, right? Scoot Henderson is probably the consensus second overall pick.
I'm not gonna lie to you. If that pick lands within the top 3, let's say it is 3, you got a chance to get Brandon Miller from Alabama.
Yeah, okay, there you go. That's my other guard. Do you feel good about keeping that, or would you still want to utilize that and hopefully extract some value out of that? Because again, if you re-sign Kyrie Irving, you have Luka Doncic, you have a lot of guards here. And not saying that like positional value necessarily should dictate the way you do this. I'm just curious on that thought process, because I understand the ease of applying Victor Wembanyama anywhere.
If that pick is in the top 5, I think that becomes very attractive to teams, and you still would want to move that pick.
Okay.
Because you're talking about, the likes of, as I mentioned, Brandon Miller, Victor Wembanyama. If you luck into number 1, I just can't believe we're at this point where we're having even that discussion when it comes to the Mavericks. And from the 945, DeAndre Ayton is a name that's floated out there. Now the connection there is that DeAndre Ayton has the same agent as Luka Doncic. Bill Duffy represents both of them. Chris Middleton is a name that we've heard as well that possibly could be available. But again, another older name that in his early 30s, how much more do you want to take on that, given what you're trying to do?
Yeah, but Chris Middleton has shown the capability of being a really good defender at times, although coming off the injury in this postseason, I don't know how well I can evaluate him on that. Also, been a closer on a championship team. Like those are qualities that you cannot overlook. But it's also going to cost a whole bunch of money, and I don't know that you have that money available to you. Then we end up in that bucket or that barrel of worms.
Mavericks got a lot of work to do this offseason as they try to remake some of their roster. It all starts in a couple weeks when we find out whether or not that top 10 pick will be kept by them, or if they are sending it to Jalen Brunson in New York.
They're going to send it specifically to, like, they're going to write it on the envelope, New York Knicks, care of Jalen Brunson.
They let him walk. Might as well give that to him, too.
Okay. All right.